Help me reach 2,000 subscribes. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every comment. Thanks. Dinner was almost ready. The kitchen warm with the smell of garlic and rosemary. The kind of quiet comfort I used to think meant everything was okay. I stood at the stove, stirring sauce, listening to the low hum of the oven, telling myself this was what stability looked like. My name is Ethan, 38, married to Laura for 11 years, and lately I clung to routines the way a man clings to a railing in rough water. Laura liked things calm, predictable. She said chaos was for people who hadn't grown up yet. I believed her, or I wanted to. We'd invited Mark to stay the weekend, an old friend of hers from college, passing through town for work. Guest room was made up fresh sheets, folded towels, the polite hospitality of a normal marriage. Mark arrived that afternoon, easy smile, firm handshake, the kind of guy who filled space without trying. Laura lit up when she saw him, a brightness I hadn't seen directed at me in a while. I noticed, of course, but I told myself it meant nothing. People were allowed to smile. By early evening, she offered to help me cook, then drift away, phone in hand, saying Mark needed fresh towels. I didn't think twice. I focused on timing, on not overcooking the pasta, on the quiet pride of providing a good meal. That's when I heard it. At first, it was just voices, low, muffled, drifting from the guest room down the hall. I wasn't trying to listen. I swear that. But there was something about the tone, the way my name slipped into conversation, casual, unguarded, like it didn't belong to me anymore. Laura said, "He's predictable." That's the problem. I froze, spoon hovering over the pot. Mark laughed softly. Some people like predictable. I know, she replied, and there was a smile in her voice I hadn't heard in months. But sometimes I wonder what it would be like to feel chosen again. The word landed wrong. Heavy. I stepped closer to the hallway, heart thudding, telling myself I was mishearing, that this was nothing. Mark's voice dropped. "You are chosen." Silence followed, thick and deliberate. My appetite vanished, like someone had turned off a switch. I thought of the years I'd spent showing up, paying bills, fixing leaks, asking about her day. I thought of the way she'd pulled away from my touch, how I'd learned to stand on my side of the bed without complaining. I took a breath, then another. I didn't storm down the hall. I didn't clear my throat. I stood there, listening to the sound of my own pulse, to the quiet understanding forming in my chest. This wasn't a single moment. It was a pattern finally speaking out loud. Laura continued, softer now. "I don't want to hurt him." Mark answered, "You're already unhappy." I stepped back, the kitchen suddenly too bright, too exposed. The sauce bubbled over, splattering the stove, a small mess I didn't bother to clean. I turned off the heat, hand steady, mind racing. Whatever was happening in that room had been happening longer than tonight. I realized I wasn't angry yet. I was clear. Dinner could wait. The truth couldn't. I walked to the table, sat down, and stared at the empty chair across from me, wondering how long someone could be present and still be alone. The voices behind the door faded, replaced by laughter, light and careless. I didn't need to hear more. I already knew this night would change everything, even if no one else knew it yet. I sat there, breathing, counting seconds, until the oven clicked off on its own. That sound felt final, like a door closing. Somewhere down the hall, the guest room door opened. Footsteps approached. I didn't look up. Whatever came next would require calm, not hunger, and I had already lost my appetite. I stayed still, letting the moment stretch, knowing this was only the beginning, not the end. The choices made tonight would echo forward, reshaping everything we pretended was solid. I waited, composed, while the house held its breath with me, balanced between what I was and what I might become. Outside, the sky darkened unnoticed, as I prepared myself to finally listen to what I'd been avoiding for years. Dinner was ready, but I wasn't. The silence ahead felt heavier than any argument we'd never had. I stayed seated, eyes forward, waiting for the truth. I heard Laura stop behind my chair. The smell of her perfume mixed with cooling food, and for a moment she didn't speak. When she finally did, Her voice was careful, almost polite. "Dinner's ready," she said, as if nothing had happened. I looked up at her face, searching for guilt, fear, anything. There was only composure. Mark hovered in the doorway, hands in his pockets, avoiding my eyes. That told me more than words ever could. "I'm not hungry," I said. My voice sounded steady, surprising even me. Laura frowned slightly, irritation flickering before she masked it. "Ethan, don't be dramatic." That word did it. Dramatic, after years of swallowing questions, of choosing peace over truth. She thought this was drama. I stood up slowly and faced her. "How long?" I asked. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in. Mark shifted, ready to leave, like a man who knew his role had been revealed. Laura exhaled, arms crossing defensively. "It's not what you think," she began, the oldest line in the book. I shook my head. I heard enough. Silence followed, heavy and unavoidable. Finally, she said, "Months." The word echoed. Months of conversations behind doors, of smiles that weren't meant for me. I nodded once, absorbing it. Anger stayed distant, like something behind glass. What I felt instead was relief. The confusion had an explanation now. Mark cleared his throat. "I should go," he muttered. Laura didn't stop him. He grabbed his jacket and left without looking back. The front door closed softly, almost respectfully. Laura turned to me, eyes shining now, not with tears but frustration. "I didn't plan for this," she said. "It just happened." I almost laughed. "Things don't just happen for months," I replied. "They're choices." We sat across from each other at the table, untouched plates between us. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I needed to fix anything. "I've been unhappy," she said. "I didn't know how to tell you." I met her gaze. "You didn't try," I said. The truth landed clean, without cruelty. She looked away. That night, I slept in the guest room, the irony not lost on me. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the house settle, thinking about the man I'd been, the provider, the steady one. I realized how often I confuse endurance with love, patience with progress, silence with peace. Somewhere along the way, I had learned to minimize myself to keep the marriage intact, and in doing so, I had disappeared. By morning, my decision felt settled, like something that had been forming long before tonight. At breakfast, I told her I wanted space. Not to punish her, not to negotiate, but to breathe. She argued, then cried, then grew quiet. I packed the bag calmly. "We'll talk later," she said. I nodded. I knew we would, but not in the way she expected. Over the next weeks, clarity replaced pain. We talked, mediated, acknowledged what was broken. There was no screaming, no public spectacle, just the quiet dismantling of a life that had already ended. Friends took sides, then drifted away. Nights were lonely, but honest. I slept better than I had in years, waking without dread. When the papers were signed months later, I felt lighter, not because I had won, but because I had stopped pretending. Laura and I shook hands, strangers bound by history. I wished her well and meant it. Closure didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived with calm acceptance and self-respect. Now, sometimes I cook dinner for one. The kitchen still smells like garlic and rosemary. The difference is the silence doesn't scare me anymore. I eat slowly, deliberately, tasting my food, tasting my freedom. I learned that appetite returns when you stop feeding a lie. Losing that dinner saved me from losing myself, and that was worth everything, including the courage to walk away and begin again. I no longer fear what I might overhear behind closed doors, because honesty, even when painful, is the only sound that finally lets you rest. Life now feels deliberate, not accidental. Every choice is mine, every quiet evening earned through honesty. I trust myself again, and that trust is louder than betrayal ever was. It's steady, grounding, and protective. I carry the lesson forward as a boundary, not bitterness, and that knowledge keeps me whole, alert, and finally at peace with a future open, unafraid, and shaped only by my own voice at last.